The scent hit me first. Expensive perfume that wasn't mine, clinging to Lena's silk scarf like a guilty secret. 2 in the morning, and my wife stumbled through our front door in Millbrook, Maine, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors of our saltbox house, overlooking the rocky coastline. "Working late again?" I asked from the kitchen doorway, watching her fumble with her purse. The irony wasn't lost on me. I used to pull those same late nights when I worked finance in Boston, before the layoffs forced us to this coastal town where I now fixed rich people's problems for half the pay. Lena's green eyes flashed with annoyance. "Don't start, Drew. The Henderson campaign is demanding, and Carter expects perfection from his team. Carter Bell, her boss at Coastal Creative, the town's premier advertising agency. The man who drove a Tesla in a town where most people owned pickup trucks, who owned the lakeside estate that made our modest home look like a garden shed." "Sure," I said, my voice dripping with the sarcasm that had become my default setting. "Carter's very hands-on, I hear." She shot me a look that could freeze the Atlantic, then headed upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower running before I made my move. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter, leather expensive enough to feed a family for a week. I'd never snooped before, call it misplaced trust or willful ignorance. But something about tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way she'd avoided eye contact, or how she'd started password protecting her phone last month. Inside, beneath her wallet and makeup, I found a manila folder. My hands shook as I opened it. "Surrogacy Agreement," read the header in bold, legal font. My wife's signature was there at the bottom, elegant and decisive. But it was the other signature that made my blood turn to ice water. Carter Bell. I read the contract twice, my mind struggling to process the clinical language that described my wife's body as a vessel, her womb as a commodity. $50,000 for carrying Carter's child. His child, not ours, his. The shower was still running upstairs. I photographed every page with my phone, my hands steadier now, fueled by a cold fury that surprised me with its intensity. When Lena came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair damp and wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the contract spread out like evidence at a crime scene. "So," I said, looking up at her with what I hoped was a calm expression, "how much is my wife's womb worth these days?" Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, then something harder, something I'd never seen before. "It's not what you think," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. $50,000 says otherwise. I tapped the contract. "Tell me, Lena, when exactly were you planning to mention that you're carrying your boss's baby?" She sat down across from me, and for a moment, I thought I saw the woman I'd married 8 years ago. The struggling art student who'd painted watercolors of the Maine coast and dreamed of making it big in advertising. "We've been trying for 3 years, Drew. 3 years of negative pregnancy tests and doctor visits, and hope turning into disappointment every month. When Carter mentioned that he and his wife were looking for a surrogate—" "His wife?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Does she know about this arrangement?" Lena's silence was answer enough. "Let me get this straight," I continued, standing up and beginning to pace. "You agreed to carry another man's child, collect 50 grand for the privilege, and somehow forgot to mention it to your husband. The man you promised to love, honor, and cherish. Remember those vows, Lena? Or were they just pretty words to you?" "My body, my choice," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. The phrase hit me like a slap. "Sure," I replied, my voice deadly quiet. "But my house, my rules, and my trust, my decision whether to give it." She stood up then, her robe billowing around her like armor. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Carter's offering me a partnership in the agency. This surrogacy, it's not just about money. It's about my future. Our future." "Our future?" I gestured at the contract. "Funny how our future involves his sperm and your eggs, but somehow I'm not mentioned anywhere in this legal document. You're being dramatic." "Am I?" Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife is cheating on me and getting paid for it. The words hung in the air between us like poison gas. Lena's face flushed red, then went pale. It's not cheating. It's a medical procedure. Right. And I'm sure all those late nights at the office are just medical consultations. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. In that moment of hesitation, I saw everything I needed to know. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my sight. Go upstairs, pack a bag, and get out. Go stay with your sister Sienna. Go stay with Carter. I don't care. But don't sleep under my roof tonight. You can't throw me out of my own house? Watch me. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. The mask slipped, and underneath was someone I didn't recognize. Someone cold and calculating. Fine, she said, but this isn't over, Drew. Not by a long shot. After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen until dawn, staring at the contract and planning my next move. Because if Lena thought she could betray me and walk away $50,000 richer, she had seriously underestimated the man she married. I'd been the underdog my whole life, the middle-class kid who married up, the laid-off executive who became a handyman, the small-town nobody married to the rising advertising star. But underdogs have one advantage: no one sees them coming. And I was done being invisible. The bait and tackle wasn't much to look at, a dive bar with weathered wooden walls and the smell of fried clams permanently embedded in the air. But it was where Millbrook's working class gathered to drink beer, watch sports, and share gossip. Most importantly, it was where my old friend Pete Morrison held court behind the bar, collecting information like a bartender turned spy. Well, well, Pete said as I walked in the next evening, my eyes still red from a sleepless night. If it isn't Drew Matheson, looking like death warmed over. Let me guess. Lena's working late again? Pete was one of the few people in town who'd known me before I became Lena's husband. We'd grown up together, played high school football together, and he'd been my best man at a wedding that now felt like ancient history. Something like that, I said, settling onto a bar stool. Whiskey, make it a double. Pete poured the drink and leaned against the bar, his expression growing serious. You want to talk about it? I looked around the bar. A few fishermen were playing pool in the corner, and an elderly couple was sharing a basket of onion rings near the window. No one was paying attention to us. What do you know about Carter Bell? I asked. Pete's eyebrows rose. Lena's boss? Rich bastard with a fancy car in the lakeside mansion? What's your interest? Call it professional curiosity. Uh-huh. Pete wiped down a glass, thinking. Well, he's been making waves since he moved here from Portland 5 years ago. Bought out the old Henderson agency, renamed it Coastal Creative, started poaching clients from the competition. Word is he's got political ambitions, maybe a run for state senate. What about his personal life? Married to some ice queen from Boston old money. No kids, which is supposedly a sore spot. She spends most of her time in their Back Bay townhouse, only comes to Maine for the summers. Pete paused. Why the 20 questions? I took a long sip of whiskey, feeling it burn down my throat. Because I think he's sleeping with my wife. Pete set down the glass he'd been cleaning. Jesus, Drew. Are you sure? Sure enough. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos I'd taken of the contract, careful to cover the surrogacy details with my thumb. Found this in Lena's purse last night. Pete squinted at the screen. What am I looking at? A contract between my wife and her boss. $50,000 for services rendered. Services? Pete's voice dropped to a whisper. What kind of services? The kind that explain why she's been coming home at 2 a.m. smelling like expensive cologne. Pete poured himself a shot and knocked it back. Christ. I mean, I'd heard rumors, but I figured it was just small-town gossip. What kind of rumors? The usual. Carter's been seen around town with different women over the years. Always married women, always discreet. There was talk about him and Sandra Mitchell last year. You remember, the real estate agent? Her husband found out, made a scene at the country club. They moved to Portland a month later. My grip tightened on my glass. Anyone else? Rebecca Walsh, the bank president's wife. That lasted about 6 months before she transferred to their Augusta branch. And there were whispers about him and Jennifer Hartley, the mayor's wife, but that might have just been wishful thinking on the part of the gossips. A pattern was emerging, and it wasn't pretty. Carter Bell had a type: married women with something to lose, women who couldn't afford to make waves, women like my wife. Here's what I don't get, Pete continued, refilling my glass without being asked. Lena's got a good thing going with you. Nice house, stable marriage, respect in the community. Why risk all that for a guy like Carter? Money, I said bitterly, and promises. He's offering her a partnership in the agency. In exchange for what, exactly? I met his eyes. What do you think? Pete shook his head. That's cold, even for Carter, and stupid. If this gets out, it'll destroy his political ambitions. The voters in Maine don't look kindly on homewreckers. Then we better make sure it gets out. We? Pete looked alarmed. Hold on there, cowboy. I'm all for moral support, but I'm not getting involved in whatever revenge fantasy you're cooking up. I'm not asking you to get involved. I'm just asking you to keep your ears open. This is a small town, Pete. People talk. And when they do, I want to know what they're saying. Pete studied my face for a long moment. You're serious about this. Dead serious. And what happens when you find out everything you want to know? What's your endgame here? I finished my whiskey and stood up, leaving a 20 on the bar. I'm going to make them both pay. Carter wants to play games with other people's marriages? Fine. But he picked the wrong wife to mess with. Drew. Thanks for the drink, Pete. And the information. I walked out of the bait and tackle with a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Carter Bell wasn't just a cheating boss. He was a serial predator who used his wealth and position to manipulate married women. He'd done it before, and he'd probably do it again after Lena, unless I stopped him. The drive home took me past Carter's lakeside estate, a sprawling contemporary house with floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed like a beacon in the darkness. His Tesla was parked in the circular driveway, and I could see figures moving around inside the house. I pulled over and sat in my truck, watching. After about 10 minutes, I saw Lena's BMW pull up behind the Tesla. She got out, smoothed down her skirt, and walked to the front door like she owned the place. Carter answered the door himself, and even from a distance I could see the way he looked at her, the way she leaned into him as he kissed her cheek. The casual intimacy of two people who'd done this dance many times before. I took out my phone and started recording. They disappeared inside, but the lights stayed on in what looked like the living room. I could see their shadows moving around, drinks being poured, comfortable conversation between lovers who thought they were safe from prying eyes. After an hour, I drove home to my empty house and uploaded the video to my laptop. It wasn't much, just two people having what could be interpreted as a business meeting, but it was a start. I opened a new folder on my desktop and labeled it Insurance Policy. Then I started planning my next move. Because if Carter Bell thought he could destroy my marriage and walk away unscathed, he was about to learn that even underdogs have teeth, and I was ready to bite. 3 days later, I was installing a new water heater for Mrs. Henderson when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the diner on Elm Street. 2 p.m. Come alone. A friend. I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me hesitate. In a town like Millbrook, mysterious messages usually meant someone had information to share, and information was exactly what I needed. The Millbrook Diner was a chrome and vinyl throwback that served the best blueberry pie in 3 counties. I arrived at 2 o'clock sharp and scanned the booths, looking for anyone who might be my mysterious contact. Mr. Matheson? A gravelly voice called from a corner booth. I turned to see Frank Cormier, my elderly neighbor, waving me over. Frank was a retired detective from the Portland Police Department who'd moved to Millbrook 5 years ago, around the same time as Carter Bell. We'd exchanged pleasantries over the fence, but we'd never had a real conversation. "Frank?" I slid into the booth across from him. "You sent the text?" "Guilty as charged." He signaled the waitress for coffee. "I hope you don't mind the cloak and dagger routine, but what I have to tell you requires discretion." The waitress brought coffee and left us alone. Frank stirred in sugar with deliberate movements, taking his time. "I know about your wife and Carter Bell," he said finally. I kept my expression neutral. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Son, I spent 30 years as a detective. I know when something's not right in a neighborhood. Your wife's been leaving at odd hours, coming home late, and her car's been spotted at places it shouldn't be. Plus, you look like hell, which tells me you know more than you're letting on." I sipped my coffee, buying time. "Why do you care?" "Because Carter Bell is a predator, and predators need to be stopped." Frank leaned forward. "This isn't his first rodeo, Drew. I've been watching him since he moved to town, and I've seen this pattern before." "What pattern?" "He targets married women, usually ones with financial pressures or career ambitions. He offers them something they want, money, advancement, connections, in exchange for sexual favors. When he's done with them, he discards them and moves on to the next victim." "You sound like you have personal experience with his methods." Frank's jaw tightened. "My daughter lived in Portland when Carter was making his mark there. She worked for a marketing firm that did business with his agency. He went after her hard: dinners, gifts, promises of a better job. She was smart enough to see through him, but others weren't so lucky." "Others?" "At least 3 women that I know of. All married, all vulnerable in some way. One lost her marriage and her job when the affair came to light. Another had a nervous breakdown. The third moved across the country to get away from him. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. And now he's working on my wife." "I'm afraid so. But here's the thing, Drew. I think you're in a unique position to stop him." "How so?" Frank reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. "Because you're not just another cuckolded husband. You're a smart man with nothing left to lose and a legitimate grievance. And because I'm going to help you." I opened the envelope and found photographs, dozens of them. Carter entering hotel rooms with different women. Carter's car parked outside houses where he had no business being. Financial records showing suspicious payments from his personal account to various women. "How did you get these?" "Old habits die hard. I may be retired, but I still have friends on the force, and I still know how to conduct surveillance." Frank's smile was wolfish. "The question is, what are you going to do with this information?" I studied the photographs, my mind racing. "What do you suggest?" "Carter's weakness is his ego. He thinks he's untouchable because he's rich and connected. But men like him always overreach eventually. They get sloppy, make mistakes, hurt the wrong person." "And you think my wife is that mistake?" "I think your wife might be the mistake that finally brings him down. But only if you play this smart." Frank leaned back in his booth, his expression serious. "There's something else you should know. Carter's not just having an affair with your wife, he's planning to use her to advance his political career." "What do you mean?" "He's been telling people that he's finally found the right woman to help him run for state senate. Someone beautiful, intelligent, and connected to the local business community. Someone who can help him appeal to female voters." My blood ran cold. "He's going to leave his wife for Lena?" "Eventually. But first, he's going to milk this surrogacy arrangement for all it's worth. Think about it. What better way to show family values than by helping a childless couple start a family? He'll spin it as an act of generosity, a modern fairy tale. Except his wife doesn't know about it." "Exactly. And when she finds out, and she will find out, the scandal will destroy him. The question is, do you want to wait for that to happen naturally, or do you want to speed up the process?" I looked at the photographs again, seeing them with new eyes. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about stopping a predator who'd been operating with impunity for years. What did you have in mind? Frank smiled, and for a moment, I could see the cop he used to be. Carter's hosting a fundraiser next week at his estate. All the local bigwigs will be there. Politicians, business leaders, society types. It's supposed to be his unofficial campaign launch. And it would be a shame if something happened to disrupt the festivities. Something that exposed his true character to all those important people. I felt a spark of excitement, the first positive emotion I'd experienced since finding that contract. I'm listening. Here's what we're going to do. Frank outlined his plan, and with each detail, I felt my respect for the old detective grow. It was elegant, devastating, and completely legal. Most importantly, it would give Carter Bell exactly what he deserved. By the time we left the diner, I had a new partner in my quest for revenge, and Carter Bell had no idea what was coming for him. As I drove home, I thought about Lena and wondered if she had any clue what kind of man she'd gotten involved with. Part of me wanted to warn her, to give her one last chance to walk away from this disaster. But then I remembered her words, my body, my choice. Fine, her choice, her consequences, and I was going to make sure those consequences were spectacular. The fundraiser was set for Saturday night, giving me a week to prepare. But first, I had some personal business to take care of. Lena had been staying with her sister Sienna since our confrontation, but she'd been texting me daily, asking to talk. Her messages had grown increasingly desperate as the days passed. We need to discuss this like adults, read her latest text. Meet me at the house tonight. 8 p.m. I arrived at 7:30 and waited in the kitchen, the same place where I'd confronted her about the contract. She walked in precisely at 8, looking polished and professional in a navy blue dress that probably cost more than most people made in a week. Thank you for agreeing to see me, she said, setting her purse on the counter. This is still my house, Lena. You don't need to thank me for existing in my own kitchen. She flinched at the coldness in my voice. Drew, please. Can we just talk without the sarcasm? That depends. Are you here to tell me you've ended things with Carter and canceled your surrogacy contract? Her silence was answer enough. Then no, we can't talk without the sarcasm. It's about the only thing keeping me civilized right now. She sat down across from me, and I could see she'd been crying. Her makeup was perfect, but I knew her well enough to spot the telltale signs, slightly red eyes, a tightness around her mouth. I never meant for it to happen this way, she said quietly. Which part? The affair or getting caught? It's not an affair, Drew. It's complicated. Complicated. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's what people say when they want to justify doing something they know is wrong. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The agency is struggling, and Carter's been talking about layoffs. When he offered me this opportunity... Opportunity? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You're calling prostitution an opportunity now. It's not prostitution, it's surrogacy. With your boss. Who you're sleeping with. For money. I counted off the points on my fingers. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck... Lena's composure cracked. Why are you being so cruel? I thought you loved me. I did love you. Past tense. But the woman I loved wouldn't have done this. People change, Drew. I've changed. I want more than this small-town life, more than fixing other people's problems for spare change. So you decided to become someone else's problem instead. She stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. You know what your problem is? You've given up. You used to have ambition, dreams. Now you're content to be a handyman in a nowhere town, living in a house that's falling apart, driving a truck that's older than some of our friends' kids. And you're content to be a rich man's mistress, carrying his child while his wife lives in ignorant bliss. His wife doesn't care. She's never here, never wanted children anyway. I'm doing them both a favor. Is that what Carter told you? That his wife doesn't care? Something in my tone made her pause. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Frank's photographs, Carter's wife, Lena Bell, entering a fertility clinic in Portland. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 days ago. Looks like she cares more than you think. Lena stared at the photo, her face going pale. Where did you get this? Does it matter? The point is, Carter's been lying to you. His wife has been trying to get pregnant for years. She doesn't know about your arrangement because he hasn't told her. That's not possible. Isn't it? Think about it, Lena. When has Carter ever mentioned his wife in your conversations? When has he talked about her being okay with this surrogacy arrangement? You've been so focused on the money and the promises that you never stopped to ask the obvious questions. I could see the doubt creeping into her expression, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. He loves me, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. He's using you. Just like he's used other women before you. Other women? I showed her more photographs. Carter with Sandra Mitchell, with Rebecca Walsh, with Jennifer Hartley. You're not special, Lena. You're just the latest in a long line of married women who thought they were different. She sank back into her chair, staring at the photos with growing horror. Oh my God. Now you're starting to get it. But the contract, the money, will disappear the moment you're no longer useful to him. And when his wife finds out, and she will find out, you'll be the one who takes the blame. You'll be the home wrecker, the other woman, the cautionary tale that other wives whisper about. Tears were streaming down her face now, ruining her perfect makeup. What have I done? For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old affection. This was the woman I'd married, vulnerable and scared beneath the polished exterior. But then I remembered the contract, the lies, the casual way she'd dismissed my feelings. You made your choice, I said. My body, my choice, remember? Drew, please. Help me fix this. Fix what? Your marriage, your reputation, your relationship with a man who sees you as a disposable commodity? All of it. I'll break the contract, end things with Carter, do whatever it takes. It's too late for that. Something in my voice made her look up sharply. What do you mean? I mean, the wheels are already in motion. Carter's fundraiser is tomorrow night, and a lot of important people are going to learn some very interesting things about their host. You're going to expose us? I'm going to expose him. You're just collateral damage. She stood up, anger replacing desperation. You bastard. You're going to destroy my career. No, Lena. You did that all by yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. I won't let you do this. You don't have a choice. Just like I didn't have a choice when you decided to betray our marriage. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back to face me. You think you're so righteous, so morally superior, but you're just as bad as he is. Maybe, but at least I'm honest about it. After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen and allowed myself one moment of regret. Then I picked up my phone and called Frank. It's done, I said. She knows what's coming. Good, Frank replied. That means she'll be desperate tomorrow night. Desperate people make mistakes. And if she warns Carter, then he'll make mistakes too. Either way, we win. I hung up and poured myself a drink, toasting my empty house and my dead marriage. Tomorrow night, Carter Bell would learn that some underdogs bite back, and the bite would be fatal. Carter Bell's lakeside estate was transformed for the fundraiser, with white tents dotting the manicured lawn and string lights reflecting off the dark water. Valets parked luxury cars while guests in evening wear sipped champagne and discussed politics, business, and the weather. It looked like a scene from a magazine, beautiful elegant, and completely artificial. I watched from the woods across the lake, using binoculars to survey the scene. Frank was positioned near the main tent, dressed as a member of the catering staff. We'd spent the week perfecting our plan, and now it was time to execute it. My phone buzzed with a text from Frank. "Target acquired. She's here." I focused my binoculars on the crowd and found Lena near the bar, stunning in a red dress that hugged her curves. She was playing the part of the successful businesswoman, networking with potential clients and laughing at their jokes. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Carter was holding court near the main tent, surrounded by local politicians and business leaders. He looked confident, relaxed, like a man who believed his future was assured. He had no idea that his world was about to collapse. At 9 o'clock, Carter stepped up to the microphone to address his guests. The crowd gathered around, champagne glasses in hand, ready to hear his unofficial campaign announcement. "Friends, neighbors, fellow citizens of Maine," Carter began, his voice carrying across the water. "Thank you for joining me tonight as we look toward the future of our great state." The crowd applauded politely. I could see Lena near the front, her face a mask of forced enthusiasm. "As many of you know, I've been considering a run for state senate," Carter continued. "Maine needs leaders who understand business, who can create jobs and opportunities for hardworking families." More applause. Carter was hitting all the right notes, saying exactly what his audience wanted to hear. "But leadership isn't just about business acumen," he said, his tone becoming more personal. "It's about character, integrity, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult." That was Frank's cue. I saw him moving through the crowd, a silver tray in his hands. On the tray were manila envelopes, each one addressed to a different guest, which is why I'm proud to announce a very special project that my agency has been working on, Carter continued, oblivious to what was happening behind him. "A project that demonstrates our commitment to family values and helping those in need." Frank had reached the front of the crowd now, distributing envelopes to the most important guests: the mayor, the county commissioner, the editor of the local newspaper, the president of the Chamber of Commerce. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to tell you about our surrogacy program, designed to help childless couples achieve their dreams of starting a family." I saw Lena's face go white. She'd realized what was happening, but it was too late to stop it. The guests were opening their envelopes now, their expressions changing from polite interest to shock, then disgust. Inside each envelope were copies of the surrogacy contract, photographs of Carter and Lena together, and a detailed timeline of their affair. "Through this program, we're not just creating advertising campaigns," Carter continued, still unaware of the chaos erupting behind him. "We're creating families, building futures, and—" "You lying son of a bitch!" The shout came from Elena Bell, Carter's wife, who had just opened her envelope. She was standing near the bar, her face flushed with rage, her hands shaking as she held the contract. The crowd turned to stare at her, then back at Carter, who had gone pale. The microphone picked up his sharp intake of breath. "Elena, what are you doing here? I thought you were in Boston." "I was, until someone sent me some very interesting photographs." She held up the pictures of Carter and Lena. "Care to explain these to our guests?" The crowd was buzzing now, people whispering to each other and looking at the contents of their envelopes. I could see the mayor shaking his head in disgust, the newspaper editor taking notes, the chamber president backing away from Carter like he had a contagious disease. "Elena, let's discuss this privately." "Privately?" Elena's voice carried across the water like a whip crack. "You mean the way you privately arranged to have your mistress carry your child? The way you privately spent $50,000 of our money on this sick fantasy?" Lena tried to disappear into the crowd, but Elena spotted her. "And you? How dare you show your face here? How dare you stand there in that dress at my house, pretending to be a respectable businesswoman when you're nothing but a high-priced whore?" The crowd gasped. Several people started pulling out their phones, recording the confrontation. This was better than I'd hoped. Elena Bell was doing my work for me. "Elena, please," Carter said, stepping away from the microphone. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You impregnate your employee with our child, spend our money on the arrangement, and I'm making a scene?" "It's not our child," Lena said, finding her voice. "It's his. The contract clearly states—" "The contract is void!" Elena pulled out her phone and showed it to the crowd. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. Any agreement made without spousal consent regarding marital assets is null and void. You won't see a penny of that money." I watched through my binoculars as Lena's world crumbled. The money was gone, the partnership was gone, and her reputation was being destroyed in front of the most important people in town. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled out my own phone and dialed the number for the local radio station, which broadcast live from community events. When the DJ answered, I could hear the chaos from the fundraiser in the background. "This is Drew Matheson," I said. "I'm Lena Matheson's husband, and I have some additional information about tonight's revelations that your listeners might find interesting." "Mr. Matheson? Are you there at the fundraiser?" "No, but I'm watching. And I want people to know that this isn't Carter Bell's first affair. He's been preying on married women for years, using his wealth and position to manipulate them into compromising situations." I could hear the DJ's excitement. This was the story of the year for a small-town radio station. "Can you prove these allegations?" "I have photographs, financial records, and testimony from multiple sources. Carter Bell is a serial predator, and tonight's scandal is just the tip of the iceberg." The DJ put me on the air live, and I spent the next 10 minutes destroying Carter's reputation with surgical precision. I named names, cited dates, and painted a picture of a man who used his power to exploit vulnerable women. By the time I hung up, the fundraiser had completely collapsed. Guests were leaving in droves, the catering staff was packing up, and Carter was standing alone near the microphone, looking like a man who'd just watched his future disappear. Elena had cornered Lena near the house, and I could see them having a heated argument. Through my binoculars, I watched my wife gesture frantically, trying to explain herself to the woman whose life she'd helped destroy. Then, Elena slapped her. Hard. The sound carried across the water like a gunshot. Lena stumbled backward, her hand pressed to her cheek, tears streaming down her face. She looked around desperately, searching for support, but found only hostile stares and recording phones. That's when she saw me. I was standing at the edge of the woods now, no longer hiding. Our eyes met across the lake, and in that moment, she understood everything. The setup, the timing, the perfect orchestration of her downfall. It had all been me. She pulled out her phone and called me. I answered on the first ring. "You did this," she said, her voice breaking. "You destroyed everything." "No, Lena. You did this when you signed that contract. I just made sure everyone knew about it." "I'll never forgive you for this." "Good. Because I'll never forgive you for what you did to our marriage. I loved you, Drew. Despite everything, I loved you." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me, the security I provided, the respectability, but you never loved me enough to stay faithful." The line went quiet for a moment. Then, "What happens now?" "Now you live with the consequences of your choices. Carter's political career is over. His marriage is over. Your partnership at the agency is over. Your reputation in this town is over. And our marriage was over the moment you signed that contract. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?" I looked at her across the lake, standing alone in her red dress while chaos swirled around her, and felt nothing. No love, no hate, no pity, just emptiness where my feelings for her used to be. "That's not my problem anymore," I said. "My body, my choice, remember? Well, my life, my choice, and I choose to live it without you." I hung up and walked back to my truck, leaving Lena to face the wreckage of her ambitions alone. Behind me, I could hear sirens. Someone had called the police about the disturbance. As I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, I thought about justice and revenge, about love and betrayal, about the price of ambition and the cost of trust. Carter Bell had wanted to use my wife to advance his political career. Instead, he'd destroyed it. Lena had wanted money and status and a partnership in a prestigious agency. Instead, she'd lost everything, including her marriage. And me? I'd wanted my wife to honor her vows, to choose our marriage over her ambitions, to love me enough to stay faithful. Instead, I'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is let go of what's destroying you. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my truck for a moment, looking at the house Lena and I had shared for 5 years. Tomorrow, I'd call a divorce lawyer. Next week, I'd put the house on the market. Next month, I'd probably leave Millbrook for good, start fresh somewhere else. But tonight, I was content to sit in the darkness and savor the taste of perfect revenge. Because sometimes, when the underdog finally bites back, the bite is fatal. And Carter Bell and my wife had just learned that lesson the hard way.